Okay, so I'll give you a little rundown of who I am. I'm one of these entrepreneurs that I became an entrepreneur because I couldn't find the job that I wanted. So I decided, it is funny, I decided to build my own career. Give you a little sense of where I came from. I grew up on welfare. I'm sure you know what welfare is. I was very poor when I was a kid. I left home when I was 16. Who's 16 here? Now, can you imagine living on your own, in your own apartment, trying to figure out how to feed yourself, that type of stuff? That's the way it was for me when I was younger. I grew up with very little. I'm from Ottawa, Canada, so I'm a Canadian. Took 27 hours to get here. It was a very long trip. But those struggles as I was a kid, it created who I am today and the way I think about things. I have built many companies. So when I got into my mid-20s, one of the things that I struggled with was trying to find a job that I wanted, and I really wanted to get into business. But what was difficult for me was I didn't have a university degree. I didn't have a college degree. And what ends up happening is when you go for a job, the first thing to look at your resume is what education do you have? And because I didn't have that education, I struggled a lot more. But that struggle, again, made me who I was because I was very determined to get into the business world. So because I couldn't get the jobs I wanted, I decided I'm going to start building companies. I failed a lot from the age of 18 to about 25. A lot of mistakes along the way, companies closed, all that kind of stuff. But I'm this type of entrepreneur that I think really big, because as an individual, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you might as well think big, because no matter what, you start in the same spot as thinking small. You're going to do something today, and tomorrow you're going to do something else, and you're just going to keep progressing. So you might as well think of something that is much larger down the road. So I've built many companies, and I'll talk about this particular company in a second that I built. But I built a company that worked with all the entertainment companies: Disney, Marvel, Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox. Do you know who Hallmark greeting card company is? You know who they are? I was Hallmark's major competitor. So I wrote a book called Keep Moving Forward: What It Takes to Be an Entrepreneur, and I talk about my story with Hallmark and how I became their competitor. Starting from the garage of my house, I built a company that produced gift bags, wrapping paper, gift bags, tissue. And in my business plan, I talked about how I will get the rights away from Hallmark. And I could never get any financing, because when financiers would look at my business plan and see that I said that, it was so big and so ambitious, they said, there's no way you're going to be able to do it. We're not giving you any money, because they thought it was unbelievable. What ended up happening is years down the road, I ended up getting the rights away from Hallmark, and I became their major competitor in Canada. And the way I did that was I kind of, how do I put this? I stalked Disney. So Disney, they wouldn't give me the rights because they felt that Hallmark, they had a great relationship with them, and it was a long time relationship. So I thought, if I can build a relationship with the people at Disney, then they would see me as a real person, as someone that they can work with and trust. So over the course of a year, I would go to wherever Disney was showcasing their business, and so I would go into the U.S. a lot of different conferences, and I would try and hang out with Disney people and try and build a relationship and a friendship and all that kind of stuff. Over the course of a year, they started trusting me. And then eventually I got a meeting with Disney, and I talked about what I wanted to build and what I wanted to do, and they said, oh, we really like you, because they had time to get to know me, and they gave me the rights to one product. That product turned to 25 products over the next year that followed, and we started importing about 15 million pieces a year into Canada, and then I grew that business into 6 other countries, including US, Australia, New Zealand, UK, a few others. I started manufacturing in China because we were importing so many products. It was becoming very difficult. Hallmark went crazy because we were the only company to get the rights away from them. They ended up terminating their entire staff in Canada, the executive team, because of what we did. The CFO of Hallmark US became the president of Hallmark Canada, with the sole goal of trying to get rid of my company, which he never could. So for years, he would come down to Ottawa, or I'd go to Toronto, and the president and I became very good friends because he liked me. We were about the same age, our kids were about the same age, and he said, if it wasn't for the fact that we were trying to destroy your company, we would be really good friends. And so we became this good relationship. And you see in my book what I talk about, that relationship. And then over the course of those years, I learned a lot of things. I learned how relationships were absolutely key if you wanted to build a good business. So then in 2008, I was in China, and I was manufacturing for that company, and I saw the first time what poverty was really like compared to where I come from. So in Canada, poverty is not the same as poverty in India or poverty in China, where people are living on the streets in mass quantities. It's not the same thing. And when I saw that, it really, really bothered me. So I decided that in 2008, I'm going to build a company to solve this problem. And it all starts with education. If you can provide proper education to people at a very young age, all the way through their childhood and growing up, you can help lift people out of poverty. So in 2008, started building a company. 2009, launched it. By 2011, it was acquired. So I got lots of money from this company I had built. The company that acquired me, unfortunately, was very short-sighted. They didn't want to continue my vision that I had for global education. By 2013, I started working, I ended up leaving that company and started working on this company that I own now called BetterU. And BetterU is about education for all. So I started focusing on India. I'm not going to make any assumptions. Anyone here from India? Okay. I didn't want to make any assumptions. You never know. So I started focusing my efforts on India. And I went to India for my first time in 2010 for the very first time. Quite honestly, I was scared of it because it was so overwhelming from what I have seen personally. I've been to India since then about 31 times. I've met the Prime Minister of India. Do you guys know Chris Gale? Yeah, so he's joined our company, so he's been working with us on supporting us, and I spent time at, do you know Sri Sri Ravi Shankar? Yeah, I spent time at the ashram with him, which was very neat. I never did that. So I got to meet a lot of leaders in India, and we've built a company now we have about 12,000 programs, educational programs from countries all over the world, being able to provide access to education across every topic you can think of, and then inroads into employment opportunities. So we're the only company that's done this around the world. And to give you a little more information, our company went public this last year, and we're closing, it's public knowledge, we're closing a $100 million investment into my company within the next 2-3 weeks. So it's almost done. But from going from an entrepreneur experience who had nothing, living on my own, to a company today that is going to be a global leader that has a crazy amount of money that we're still trying to figure out how to spend, or how to, not spend, but how to use it for the growth of our business. It all started because I couldn't find a job. And now I'm here in Singapore talking about how I couldn't find a job to a bunch of students. So, at the end of I guess the day, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just be persistent, be determined, never give up. And that's why my book is called Keep Moving Forward. Because out of all the issues I've ran into over my career, I just kept moving forward because I kept thinking, if I can just keep making a mistake, fix the mistake, move forward, make a mistake, fix it, and keep building, eventually I'd get to a point where I would be successful at what I do. And it landed me in front of you today. Any questions?
Sir, your book, Keep Moving Forward. My introduction first. I'm Tushar Goyal from Queenstown campus. I also wish to become an entrepreneur like you. So you're at such a good stage, you're a very successful entrepreneur today. According to your book, Keep Moving Forward, what is your next stage? What is your next target? Also, what are the best initiatives you think that have been implemented in Singapore for encouraging entrepreneurship?
So in Singapore, I'll answer that question first. I don't know. This is only my second time to Singapore, and my first time was about 4 months ago. It's beautiful here, by the way. The weather's fantastic. For your first question, what was your first question?
So, your book, Keep Moving Forward.
Yeah.
You're at such a successful stage. What is your next step? What are your future plans?
So personally, I don't share my personal stuff, but I will with you. My goal has always been to figure out and solve poverty. From an education perspective, we are going to build a platform that could transcend different countries. So our goal is to equalize education for everybody, right? So that no matter where you are, if you're sitting in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, or Indonesia, wherever you are in the world, having education to everybody is our goal. I know eventually we will get acquired. There will be a time where one of these big companies will look at us, and that will end up happening. My personal goal is to continue along the path of solving these major problems. I've become very good at solving problems. This one's a big one. I am going to work on some of the other challenges that we have in Canada and the U.S. around poverty. In Ottawa is the capital city of Canada, right? And we're a very privileged country, but in my city alone, which is a very small city, there's over 40,000 kids that grow up with limited food and things like that. That shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't. So my goal is to start changing and focusing on social responsibility, things like this, that we can make a big difference, having a purpose, not just building something to make money. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Avantika. Most teaching, digital or otherwise, focus on skills for jobs that promise a better lifestyle. Do you foresee change wherein universities and society on the whole gearing up for nurturing and providing learning on higher thinking and higher purpose?
I hope so. One of the big challenges with universities is a lot of the universities are theory based. No matter what job you get into, and I tell this to my kids too, you go to university, you learn theory. Don't get me wrong, it's very important because it gets your mind thinking, but you have to have the skills in order to achieve the things you need, or the jobs that you want to go after. If you don't have those skills, it doesn't matter if you have a PhD, you're not going to get the job you want. So you have to focus on the skill part. From my perspective, and this is the way I've always looked at it, if you look at some of the major successes in the world, look at all the dropouts that have succeeded in the businesses, Facebook, and look at Microsoft and all these major leaders that have dropped out of school, because they realized that it's the skills that they have that are going to create the opportunities. From all your perspective, school is very important. It gets you to think about things, but you have to also take on the skills that you need. And the best way I've always described it, think of the job you want and just Google it. What skills do I need for this job? And then start working on those skills as you progress, so that by the time you get out of university, you not only have the theory and the smarts, but you also have the skills that can help you accomplish that, because the universities today, unfortunately, are not prepared for providing all the skills that are required, I think. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. It's very honored to meet you today. Sir, I wanted to ask you that taking on solving poverty through the means of education is a huge responsibility in itself. And when you talk about giving education to poor people, are you also focusing on the type of education you're giving, that by eventually they can become entrepreneurs themselves? And how do you think the global leaders can help you better further envision this social responsibility?
Yes, so it's important, the type of education. So with BetterU, the educators that we work with are leaders around the world. So we partner with the top of the top. From a rural area perspective, when you go into, or I don't say rural, poverty people, when you go into people who don't have access to a lot of stuff, education is, because it's challenging. Some poor areas aren't as illiterate as they should be, or literate as they should be. So being able to provide them with facilitators and things like that can help them become more literate is very important. The proper education from the base all the way up is also very important. It can't just be any random content. It has to be good and has to lead to stuff. From a global leadership perspective, and that's why I was speaking at this conference, it's important to get these major leaders to start seeing the same way. You look at the Facebook and the Googles and all these different Yahoos and all stuff of the world. A lot of them are focused on technology and how do we provide access, but that's only part of the problem. So I've been trying to connect with them and educate them on, there's two parts to it. There's the technology, which includes the delivery of stuff, access to internet, infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. But then there's the education component as well, which includes a whole variety of things, because education for every single one of us would be different. Different skills, different education, different ambitions where you want to go into different careers, so you have different things. So trying to educate the Microsofts and all these around the world are very important. We've been partnering with leaders around the world as well. So, for example, the High Commissioner of India is on our board of advisors. We're working with a bunch of other major leaders to try and join us as well. Today, I met with the head of Tata Sons, which was kind of cool, getting them on board, some senior people like this. The more people at leadership level that we can get to participate in what we're doing will really make a huge difference around the world, really will. You're welcome. Yes.
Hello, sir. My name is Anuptam and I'm from the GIIS East Coast campus. So you help thousands of people in India get formal education. How do you plan to expand your company to reach and benefit more people across the world?
So what's interesting about our platform, and this is where technology has enabled us to do that, when you look at Amazon, so everyone knows who Amazon is, right? You can buy whatever products you want. Amazon is really a platform. If you look at the products they sell, so like our phones or these glasses, Amazon typically doesn't make these. So they're shipped from somebody else. So they have the ability to go take their platform and go from country to country and set up a different platform in that country, because the source of the products themselves don't actually resonate in that country. They're just delivered to whoever they want. Our platform's similar. It's the technology that connects educators from all over the world. So if you want to go to Harvard, for example, through our platform, you can connect through our partner edX, which would then connect you to Harvard in the US. It doesn't mean Harvard is physically coming over here. It means you now have access. If we go to Indonesia and we have our platform, it's the same thing. The connection to Harvard is still the same. So from a globalization, the more partners we get in our platform now, when we start going to different countries, they'll all have the same access to the global partnerships that we've established. Yeah. You're welcome. Yes?
So since you just mentioned that BetterU is an education platform for the poor people and other people living in India and other such countries, but since it's an online platform, we need connectivity, internet connectivity devices, which many people would not know how to use because of the language barriers, the technological barriers. So what makes it different than if they would have better schools that if the government could build, and if rather than going to BetterU, what difference would it make?
That's a great question. So we've looked at that, and I'll tell you about that in a second. The challenge that India has from an emerging market perspective, or re-emerging, because they're re-emerging, to build brick and mortar facilities, the problem is it's not just the facilities. They need qualified teachers to come in and teach. India doesn't have enough qualified teachers around the country to support the growth of their population, so they have to go online. There's no question about it. To your other question, which it's very smart that you asked that, the biggest challenge with rural areas is that exact problem. A lot of them don't have connectivity, they don't have access, they don't have technology, they don't know how to use it. So what we've looked at in some of our programs that we're going to implement is providing like an Uber-type system where we facilitate someone going into the village with the technology, and they become the facilitator that trains the individuals. So it's not the individual who has to learn how to use it. It becomes a classroom with them sitting there with the instructor going through it. The other thing which is interesting is we looked at how do we reach rural areas and how do we bring people into those areas. There's a localization of language, which is difficult. There's a trust factor and credibility, and how do you find people to do that? So we've been looking at retired military. A lot of military individuals come from rural areas. They retire between the age of 37 and 44. There's 50,000 or so in India alone a year that come out of retirement. They're looking for a second career. Most of them go back to their villages. So we're looking at providing them with the tools and the resources to become partnered with us, going back to their local village with the technology and access to the education through us, and we provide access to connectivity and things like that. So then we bring the world of education into the villages with a facilitator, so that the individuals, if they don't understand the language or whatever, they're facilitated with, and they have access to all the technology and stuff through us. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes?
I'm just like listening to you talk about your life. Just out of curiosity, like, you know, when you started off, and since when we think of entrepreneurs, it's always about someone who can maximize profit and things like that. So, in your way, did your goals change? Because profit and education are like on two different sides, right? So, did your goals change?
They did.
Or did you have like multiple goals that came in your way? Like, how did it do?
So there was two stages of my life, and they did change. So when I was in my mid-20s, I was trying to get out of poverty, and so my goal was to make money. When I started building the company for Disney, we were making a lot of money, but I started realizing that didn't make me feel good. It didn't have a purpose, which bothered me. When I was in China and I came across the poverty, that's when my life changed again, because now I started looking at I think the mindset and the ability to do something that can actually help our world, and that's where I started changing the way I thought. And you know, you can always do well in business if you're solving something that is a large purpose. So even with us, with this company BetterU, we are a public company, so we're a publicly traded company now. I have shareholders that expect that we make money. But if you do good and you build something that solves a mass problem, money will come. But it's not just about the money, because we know that what we're building will solve huge amounts of problems within India, other emerging markets, and also around the world. Because it's not in Canada and the US and some of the other countries, there's a workforce shortage. We need more resources to also support the growth of our countries. We don't have enough population. India could be the workforce of the world. They just need someone who can come and help facilitate that. So we will make a lot of money, but it's with purpose. So it's social responsible initiative, which is fantastic. Yeah, you're welcome.
So my name is Akshay, and I'm from East Coast Campus, and I'm honored to be talking with you. So my question to you is that how has education improved with evolution in technology?
So the education has improved because my kids do this all the time. I used to be able to say something to my children and they believe me because they think I was right. Not anymore. If I say something to my son, he'll go on his phone right away, he'll Google it, and he'll be like, well, Dad, according to, and they'll start reading the source, and I'll be like, oh, okay. So the interesting thing about technology is it provides access to education right away at your fingertips. And not just access to education, but to the right education, the right information. It's also enabled the collaboration globally. Because the problem with access to education before technology is most universities, colleges, K-12 around the world, if there was no technology that could bridge that gap, you'd never have access to it. So it would be much more difficult proposition for a mass market to grow without access. So this technology has enabled the connectivity around the world that is opening up your opportunities. If you want to go study at Harvard, but you can't go to Harvard, you can do it online. And you can still get access to the quality education, which is what you're trying to get. So it's really helped open the world. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, I'm Abhinav. I'm from GIIS East Coast campus. So my question to you, are entrepreneurs made or are they born?
I don't think they're born because it's not easy being an entrepreneur. I think that I was made because I was forced to do things that I had no choice. If I wanted to survive, if I wanted to be what I wanted to be, I had to start thinking differently. I think Indians in general are mostly entrepreneurial because you're in an environment where it's so competitive. And because it's so competitive, you have to think outside the box. You can't follow the norm. Otherwise, at the end of the road, you're not going to have an opportunity. You have to start thinking, how do I become more than I am today? Unless you're put in that situation where you have to struggle, I think that's where entrepreneurship comes into play. My life, I struggled, and that's why I became an entrepreneur. Most people, I think, in India, and that's why the mindset, a lot of them are like entrepreneurs because it's not easy. There's a lot of competition, and you have to stand out. So, I think you're made. You're welcome.
Throughout your life, you stress a lot about how networking and having the ability to basically connect with the right people got many of the initiatives to move forward. How would you suggest that we improve on our networking skills so that we're able to make good connections that could potentially help us with whatever we plan to do ahead? So
you have to be, you can't be shy. When I was younger, when I was your age, I was extremely shy. I hated standing up. I hated talking in front of people. I would go all red, and it wasn't a good experience. I'd get all hot. I started pushing myself to do that. I would push myself to go to events. I'd push myself to speak at events. So this event, I was one of the speakers, and it's one of our requirements as a company. If we're going to go to an event, I'll give you an example. I spoke in Australia this last year to over 8,000 people. As biggest crowd I've ever spoken in. I was so nervous, but I forced myself to do it because I realized if I can get my story across and I can talk about BetterU, what we're doing, there's 8,000 people more that are in our field that would know who I am. So from a networking perspective, the key thing is just be there. Be there and just go and talk to somebody, introduce yourself and just talk. I've always found that it's better to ask them questions about themselves and what they do and try and understand who they are. Because then you can start seeing, how can I connect with this, or how can this work? If you try, because that happens to me all the time, someone will meet with me and they'll ask me for something. And as soon as they ask me for something, it kind of puts up a wall of, it's not going to be a collaborative relationship. They just want something from me. Where when you want to build a relationship, that's a true relationship. That could be a potentially long-term friendship and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, hello, I'm Aditya from East Coast campus. What do you think is the most fruitful industry in today's world?
Most fruitful? Technology.
Like, on what basis?
That it's going everywhere. Technology is in every part of the world, and it's expanding and it's changing. AI and anything, augmented reality and things like that. The future of technology. If you can get into technology, I'm not just talking about coding or anything like that, but start thinking about opportunities that leverage technology, healthcare and things like that. I think that's where the future is definitely going, because it also creates a globalization for you. If you get into retail or things like that, it's typically localized. But if you get into something online, that's something that taps into the use of technology, it opens up the world of opportunities.
This is a very general question, but what is the ratio of
the quality of the idea, perseverance, and luck behind any successful venture?
I honestly believe, I'll talk the luck part, you make your own luck. Because, you know, while things will be lucky, like you'll come across, I'll give you a great example. This is pretty funny. So I met with Times of India for my first meeting with these guys back in 2015. I really wanted to work with them. I was going up to meet with Sri Ravi Shankar at his ashram, and I was going to cancel that meeting because I just met with Times of India. They wanted me to meet with them again the following Monday, but I was going to go to the ashram and then fly back home. So what I was going to do is cancel my trip to see the ashram. I was going to stay in Mumbai and prepare for that following week. I went through the security gate at the airport and I lost my laptop. I forgot it at the belt. And because I didn't have it, I couldn't prepare for that meeting. So I decided I will go to the ashram because I can't work anyways. I go to the ashram, and when I met with Sri, I was in his office, and it was a Saturday at 2:45. And I say that purposely because it was very odd what happened. So I was there with him for almost an hour, and I was talking about how I really wanted to do a deal with Times of India. There was an opportunity that if they became an investor, we can really get visibility across the country. And I went on for about 45 minutes talking about Times of India. And Sri kept giggling. And I thought he was giggling because of my mannerisms, or I don't know, whatever reason he was giggling. At the end of it, he goes, "Have you met Miss Indu Jain, the founder of Times of India, who was sitting right beside me?" So I turned to her, I'm like, "What?" And I said, "What are the odds? We're here on a Saturday and the founder of Times of India is beside me." So I took a picture of her, and then I did not give her a business card. I did not ask for a business card. And I did that purposely because I started realizing from a relationship perspective, you don't want to. She's there for spiritual reasons, obviously, and I didn't want to tap into that. So I didn't do anything. I took the picture. Got back to Mumbai. I had my meeting with these guys, and I had that picture was the first slide on my presentation. And as soon as they came up, they all like, How do you know Miss Indu Jain? I'm like, "Oh, we go way back." good relationship. But from a luck perspective, that was luck. However, I decided to go there, and the fact that she happened to be there was very, very interesting. From a perseverance perspective, you have to persevere. You have to, because a lot of people, when they run to a roadblock, most people will quit. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it. As soon as you do that, you've given up already. You just got to keep going, because at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur, everything goes wrong all the time. As long as you keep pushing forward, and eventually it's going to go right. You'll make mistakes. It's fine. You just learn from the mistake and move on. But as soon as you quit, you're no longer an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur means you don't quit, ever. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that students have enjoyed, and probably no one realized that it's already 45 minutes. We've been interacting.
Really? Can I get a picture with him? Do you mind?
Yeah.